Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. There were 3 people seated at the farthest table inside the restaurant. They seemed a little strange, as they had conical bamboo hats over their heads and veils draped over their faces. It was difficult to make out their physical appearances, and even their figures were hidden beneath wide, oversized robes. The person seated at the innermost corner said, "I didn't expect this to happen." She had a bright and crisp voice, but she wasn't loud. Her voice had a limpid and sweet-sounding quality. Another woman's voice rang out to her right. Her charming and enchanting voice was filled with lament as she said, "Yes. Who would have thought that the Tang sect could defeat the Holy Ghost sect? Sister Zhong, do you know what ability they used at the end?" The voice that belonged to the leftmost girl had a special feminine quality. She answered, "I'm not sure, either. However, it's true that everyone from the Tang sect can be considered the most elite and outstanding individuals from the Academy's younger generation." The innermost girl said, "Given enough time, they will definitely become Shrek Academy's mainstays and cornerstones. But I don't understand, why didn't they represent Shrek Academy in this tournament? If they had Wang Chioa, they would have had an easier time claiming the championship." The innermost lady was the Star Luo Empire's princess, Shu Jojo, while the girl sitting on the right was the Heavenly Soul Empire's princess, Wei Na. The girl on the left was Shrek Academy's eldest senior sister, Zhong Lishuan. Who would have expected that these 3 ladies who represented 3 different powers would come together in such a small and dilapidated restaurant? But it was easier to avoid discovery in a place like this. Zhong Lishuan smiled casually and said, "They have their own reasons. Our academy isn't a sect after all, and we won't hold them back." Shu Jojo didn't continue harping on the issue, even though she was shaken and dumbfounded when the Tang sect eradicated the Holy Ghost sect's entire team, without losing a single team member of their own. No matter what, Shrek's 7 monsters made up the Tang sect's core, and even though Shu Jojo and Wei Na looked up to them, they still weren't those top-tier powerful individuals. The 2 princesses had many more responsibilities than just the tournament. Shu Jojo lowered her voice and said, "How are things looking on your side, Sister Zhong?" Zhong Lishuan naturally knew what she was trying to say. She tilted her head and said, "I've discussed it with our elders, and we have decided to participate in your operation." Both Shu Jojo and Wei Na trembled at the same time as they heard this. There was nothing more exciting than this piece of news for either of them. "All right. Our chances are so much better with your aid." Shu Jojo planted her hands on the table excitedly. Even though she deliberately kept her voice down, the other 2 girls could still hear the exhilaration in her voice. Wei Na nodded as well and said, "That's great. We have to unite in the face of a great enemy, and I hope this will serve as a beneficial beginning. The Sun Moon Empire isn't impregnable, no matter how strong they are. The Heavenly Soul Empire and the Star Luo Empire felt a lot more urgency in dealing with the Sun Moon Empire, at least compared to Shrek Academy. These 2 empires would have to take the vanguard if the Sun Moon Empire launched an invasion." Zhong Lishuan whispered, "All right, let's talk about the details. Time is of the essence, and we will go back to making the necessary arrangements after our discussion. You don't have to hide the details of our operation anymore." Shu Jojo nodded at once. She harbored no suspicions about Zhong Lishuan. Given Shrek Academy's status on the continent, they wouldn't leak details about the operation even if they weren't participating. Furthermore, Shrek Academy had already declared that they would participate, and they wouldn't go back on their word. This was the reputation and trust that Shrek Academy had accumulated and built up over the years. Both empires also knew about Zhong Lishuan's entry into the Sea God's Pavilion. Her presence was enough to represent the entire academy. The 3 women's voices faded into silence, and only their mouths shifted up and down behind their veils. "How are things going?" Shu Qianran leaned against a soft couch. His eyes were closed into slits, but they were sparkling with emotion as he stared at a man completely covered in black kneeling not far from the couch. "Your Highness, the arrangements have been made. Soldiers have been delegated in the north, south, and east. Every single region is anchored by Class 9 Soul Engineers, and every spot has more than 5 stationary Soul Cannon shells. They should know about our setup due to our deliberate leaks." Shu Qianran laughed grimly and said, "How about the west? How are preparations going?" The man in black said, "We are prepared in the west as well. Those people from before are still at the western front, and we have given them one last chance. Xu Tianran nodded and said, very well done. Continue making preparations, and make sure that everyone is on the highest alert and vigilance over the next 2 days, so that we can be prepared for every possibility. You may leave. Yes, Your Highness, the man in black acknowledged respectfully. He stood up and quickly vanished into the darkness. A thoughtful look appeared on Xu Tianran's face. I hope they make the right choice, and that they choose the western path. We won't have to expend so much effort and energy that way. With that, his body suddenly drifted up from the soft couch he was on, and he floated over to his wheelchair without releasing his martial soul. He pushed forward with his hands through his sleeves, and his wheelchair began sliding out. The epic fight between the Tang sect and the Holy Ghost sect made the city's atmosphere a lot warmer and more enthusiastic. Everything settled down overnight, and Radiant City seemed exceptionally calm and quiet when dawn broke the next day. It felt as if the entire city was still in a deep slumber, and it wasn't about to wake up for a long time. Huo Yuhao was up early in the morning. He had astonishing regenerative abilities, and he also had the Haodong power that he shared with Wang Dong'er. He felt as if he had been revived after the previous night's rest. He was full of energy and vitality this morning. Wang Dong'er pushed his wheelchair into Beibei's room after they had breakfast. Wang Dong'er knocked twice on the door, with no response. She was just about to use the room key that Beibei had given Huo Yuhao. The door opened from the inside. Zhong Lishuan was the one who opened the door. Her eyes seemed red and swollen, as if she had just been crying. Ah, hello, eldest senior sister. Why don't we come back later? Huo Yuhao looked a little awkwardly at Zhong Lishuan. Zhong Lishuan frowned and said, come in. I've just finished delivering breakfast to Beibei and tending to his wounds. She stepped aside and let them in. Wang Dong'er's gaze was a little strange, as she pushed Huo Yuhao into Beibei's room. There was a thick medicinal smell in the room. Nobody trusted the Sun Moon Empire to send someone to heal Beibei's wounds. Instead, Shrek Academy sent a healing-type Soul Master to complete this task. Beibei's face was very pale as he lay in bed. This was the second time he had sustained severe injuries since coming to Radiant City. He had suffered internal injuries last time, and he was recovering from heavy external injuries this time. However, Beibei's eyes seemed as bright as ever. His wounds were severe, but his condition had stabilized after treatment. Powerful Soul Masters had bodies far stronger and tougher than normal people, and external wounds healed far quicker than internal ones. I'm going to go back. We will follow the plan. Zhong Lishuan seemed to revert to the majestic and dignified eldest senior sister. She nodded at Beibei, then at Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong'er, before she turned to leave. She even closed the door behind her. Wang Dong'er pushed Huo Yuhao over to Beibei's bedside. Huo Yuhao asked concernedly, how are you feeling, eldest senior brother? Beibei smiled faintly and said, don't worry, I'm fine. My injuries are lighter than you think. Xiao Ya's blue-silver grass didn't shatter my bones, and it passed between my ribs. I managed to deliberately dislocate 4 of my ribs in the nick of time to avoid direct contact, and I also deliberately shifted my organs aside. My injuries seem bad, but they are simple external injuries. I feel a lot better after treatment, and my ribs and organs have returned to their original positions. Huo Yuhao's eyes lit up as he listened to Beibei's words. My eldest senior brother is such a great strategist. I wonder how teacher Xiao Ya is doing, Huo Yuhao lamented. Beibei replied, I carefully felt her spiritual undulations when we were together. I could feel that her spirit was obscured behind a layer of filth, and her personal consciousness had been completely silenced and locked away. Fortunately, her memories haven't been removed. The evil soul masters sealed her memories so that they could maintain her fighting will. They used their sinister abilities to gradually shift and change her personality, so that her memories from the past would slowly fade away. They didn't directly remove her memories, as doing so would affect her cultivation. Her circumstances could be much worse. I sustained injuries as a price so that I could trigger some kind of reaction from Xiao Ya. What happened afterwards proved that I was quite successful, and I think I've managed to break through a crack to Xiao Ya's silenced inner heart. Even though the evil soul masters sealed it up again right away, how can it be so easy to seal her away entirely? A confident smile broke out across Beibei's face. Compared to before, he seemed as if he possessed extraordinary intelligence, and the resolve to face anything that came his way. Huo Yuhao felt a little fearful as he said exasperatedly, eldest senior brother, are you saying all this just to console us? Ahem, Bei cleared his throat twice and said, why would I do that? I'm saying all this so that I can strengthen your confidence. Yesterday was so close. Who can match you in terms of secrets, depth, and hiding abilities? You really caught everyone's attention, and gained everyone's respect after yesterday's match. However, you have been placed at the heart of the struggle, where the wind and the waves are the fiercest. The Holy Ghost Church probably hates you to the core. Huo Yuhao smiled and answered, let them hate me, it's not like I can control their emotions anyway. Eldest senior brother, did you arrange everything with eldest senior sister when she came by? Bei nodded and said, everything has been arranged. What an exciting and busy night we shall have. I wonder what will become of Radiant City tomorrow morning, when the finals are about to begin. Huo Yuhao said, since you've already enjoyed eldest senior sister's breakfast filled with love, we don't have to give you the food that we've brought for you. You should have a good rest, Dong'er and I will take our leave. Bei snapped, you dare slander your eldest senior brother. Go. Huo Yuhao chortled as Wang Dong'er pushed his wheelchair out. Yuhao. Bei suddenly called. Huo Yuhao turned back. Bei lowered his voice and said, you have to prioritize your own safety if tonight's operation cannot be completed. You're the true future of the academy and the Tang sect, and you cannot brave any dangers. Do you understand? Huo Yuhao smiled faintly, and answered, rest assured, eldest senior brother. Have we not arranged this way before? According to our plan, everything will be fine. Don't forget, I can. He stopped talking, and gestured with his hands. Bei's expression softened and relaxed as he nodded lightly and said, still, please be careful. Yes. Wang Dong'er pushed Huo Yuhao out of Bei's room and returned to their own. Now that I think about it, I'm looking forward to tonight. Wang Dong'er's eyes suddenly grew excited as she shut the door behind her. Huo Yuhao turned to look at her and said seriously, Dong'er, when we are going through with the operation tonight, you can't. I know, I have to think about the big picture. You've said that so many times. Wang Dong'er smiled enchantingly as she spoke. However, a thread of anxiety quickly flowed through her eyes. But I'm worried about you when I'm not by your side. Furthermore, you have to face so many more dangers and perils tonight compared to the rest of us. You have to control two situations at once, it's going to be so tiring for you. In the event that you're exposed, you don't have to care about us. We will be able to escape even if we have to fight our way out forcefully. You must take care of yourself. Huo Yuhao nodded. He grasped Wang Dong'er's hands and pulled her over to his side as he placed his arms around her slim waist and leaned in. I'm worried about one thing right now, the road we have to take when we are leaving. Eh? Huo Yuhao was still leaning against Wang Dong'er when he suddenly sat up straight, and his eyes became a lot sharper and more focused than before. He was staring at the tea table in the room. Huo Yuhao had always been cautious and careful. He had swept the room with his spiritual power habitually when they came back, and he always started from one direction before he rotated his spiritual power in a circle so that he could make his sweep as thorough as he could. Huo Yuhao could feel that something wasn't right when his spiritual power came across the tea table, because there was an extra something on top. There was a letter, and it was definitely not there when they left for breakfast before this. Wang Dong'er immediately raised her guard and half-squatted like a leopard. She leaned in close to Huo Yuhao's body, and spiritual undulations instantly rippled from her body as she prepared to adapt and react to any eventuality. Huo Yuhao waved his hand and said, there's no danger. I'm not sure who placed this here, but it looks like someone thoughtful. He waved his right hand at the letter on the tabletop as he spoke, and used the Tang sect's capturing crane controlling dragon. The letter floated into the air and drifted towards him. Wang Dong'er raised her right hand, and thin rays of faint golden light waltzed through the air as they nimbly removed the letter from the envelope without damaging its contents at all. Their teamwork seemed very casual, but there was so much tacit understanding in it. The letter opened up in mid-air to reveal a row of small and graceful words. Leave immediately. The western side is still safe for now. Hurry. No name was left at the end, there was only a circular marking. Wang Dong'er's eyebrows knitted faintly as she snapped around to look at Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao contemplated for a moment before an awkward look surfaced on his face. You know who sent this? Wang Dong'er was very sensitive, and she could immediately tell from his expression that he knew. Huo Yuhao tilted his head and said, it should be Juzi. I've seen this mark before. She used to leave this mark behind on the soul tools she created back at the Sun Moon Academy. Wang Dong grunted and said, "You're getting it on with girls everywhere, huh? So, it's a letter from an old flame." Huo Yuhao forced a laugh and said, "Now's not the time to be jealous, Dong. Plus, don't you already know my heart? There's no space for anybody else in my heart but you." Wang Dong giggled and snatched the letter from the air. "I don't get jealous so easily. But Zhu Zi is very nice to you, indeed. She risked being discovered to send you a letter at a time such as this. You have to remember her feelings and her favor." Huo Yuhao tilted his head once more and said, "It seems like the situation is a lot more perilous than we had originally imagined." Huo Yuhao flicked the letter in his hands lightly and scrutinized the words once more. He lowered his voice and said, "I can tell from the words that Zhu Zi knows some things about what the Sun Moon Empire wants to do against us. However, she's from the Sun Moon Empire after all, and she's also engaged to the Crown Prince. I don't think she wants to tell us too much. Things are probably going to change, and chaos may break out after the finals. The Sun Moon Empire and the Holy Ghost Church might make a move against us immediately afterwards." Wang Dong asked, "The letter says that the western side is still safe for now. What does that mean? Does this mean that our judgments before this were wrong?" Huo Yuhao laughed bitterly and replied, "The western side is our only choice whether or not our predictions and judgments are wrong. The news that our eldest senior sister has given us is simply too astounding. There are Class 9 stationary soul cannons locking down the other three sides. Those are frightening forces that are sufficient to kill titled Doluor, and possibly even transcendent Doluor. They are considered the Sun Moon Empire's strategic weapons, and they are taking out so many of them at once this time. It's clear that they have made up their minds. Furthermore, they must have complementary locator-type soul tools with them. The Star Luo Empire gave us that information. That also means that Shu Jojo, Wei Na, and the others all know about this. There is no question that they will choose the western path, as well under such circumstances. We will become even weaker and more isolated if we choose to break through one the other three fronts by ourselves. It's better if we concentrate our forces and make an attempt on the western front." It's a pity that she didn't mention what the situation was like on the western side. Wang Dong said, "I believed at the start that working together with the body sect was like asking a tiger for its skin. They don't typically do things like normal people. Furthermore, the plan cannot keep up with everything that's happening. Everybody might be in danger when the time comes." Huo Yuhao continued, "The Tang sect is the smallest target, and that's our only advantage for now. Furthermore, if we end up facing an unbeatable foe, or we find ourselves in irrevocable danger, I can only expose myself and take everyone into my demiplane of specters. At most, we can hide in there for some time before coming back out. Radiant City can't stay locked down forever. Anyhow, we will follow the other three main powers to break through the Western Front when the time comes, and if something happens or problems arise, I will immediately hide and protect myself." Wang Dong said, "All right. Fortunately, you still have that trump card. I wouldn't be so agreeable to this, otherwise." Huo Yuhao said, "We should plan more carefully so that we can plug any loopholes that might appear as tightly as we can." "Okay." The deathly silence in Radiant City lasted all the way till midday. The overly excited citizens from yesterday were slowly waking up, and everything seemed to return to normal. However, the final that was about to happen the next day seemed to be a little colorless compared to the Tang sect's epic fight against the Holy Ghost sect the previous day. It was clear that the Tang sect was undoubtedly stronger than Shrek Academy, as they had managed to defeat the Holy Ghost sect. However, the only uncertainty was how much the Tang sect could recover after their excessive exhaustion and consumption from their previous battle. The sun slunk towards the west as time continued to pass, and Radiant City's atmosphere became a little more bustling. The reason for that was because another tournament close to home was about to begin. This was also the final round. The Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament, organized by the three underground organizations, was about to have its grand finals tonight. The three underground organizations sent forth 3 soul engineers each. The grand finals betting process was spectacular and colorful. There were many details regarding the 9 participating soul engineers circulating around. The audience was allowed to bet on rankings, on the first 3, and on the champion. There were several other strange betting options for the rankings, and many gamblers were spoiled for choice. The three underground organizations thought as long and hard as they could in order to maximize their profits. They unleashed every single ounce of their influence so that they could lead as many citizens to the grand finals, and so that these citizens could participate in the last betting phase of the tournament. The prizes that the participating Seoul engineers stood to win in the grand finals were extremely generous and luxurious. The final champion would win a Class 9 Seoul tool. The Seoul tool itself was a priceless item, and the champion would also win 1 ton of rare metals that the champion could choose at his or her own discretion at the same time. 49 rare metals would be available for the picking when the time came, as long as the total weight didn't exceed 1 ton, and each of the rare metals didn't weigh more than 100 kilos. The first and second runners-up had prizes as well, but these prizes were stark in comparison to what the champion would receive. They didn't get Class 9 Seoul tools, and would only get 1 ton of rare metals. The remaining Seoul engineers wouldn't win a single dime. This reward system was undoubtedly aimed at instigating the 9 participating Seoul engineers' competitiveness and will to win. Furthermore, these were the prizes that were to be given on the surface. The 3 underground organizations each had their own form of encouragement for their participating Seoul engineers, and these Seoul engineers would receive plentiful rewards from their respective organizations if they won something in the grand finals. This attractive reward system was the reason why so many young Seoul engineers had participated in this tournament. Inside the Green Hotel. Tang Sai and Tang Wu aren't here yet. Did you not inform them about the timing? Third elder glared at Chenan solemnly, and his eyes became a little cold and eerie. Chenan's forehead broke out in a cold sweat as he said hurriedly, I have informed them. I informed them a long time ago. I told them right after the semifinals ended that they had to be here early today, so that we could make some final preparations. HMPH. If they don't show up on time, you will compensate the Duskwater Alliance's losses. You will have to pay with your life, Third Elder muttered coldly. Calm down, teacher. I believe they'll be here soon. In the end, the rewards are very generous and extravagant. 96, Huang Jing, chimed in with a smile on his face. He was as calm and steady as he had always been. This was in stark contrast to 98 standing beside him, who had already been eliminated from the tournament. 98's face seemed a little dark and gloomy. The only thought in Mock's head was his darkness green dragon. Don't trouble him anymore, old 3. I believe that kid will arrive. We need to have a proper discussion with him after the tournament. A deep and thick voice rang out. The Duskwater Alliance Master, Nangong Wan, appeared in the hotel's main lobby. The entire Green Hotel seemed like it was under martial law, as uncountable men in black filled up half of its main hall. Nangong Wan, old 3, Mock and Huang Jing stood in the center of the main hall, along with several large trunks. What they contained was obvious. These trunks were used to carry the rare metals that were to be used for the tournament. Sounds traveled from the entrance right at this moment. Under the guidance of 2 men in black, a wheelchair appeared in Nangong Wan and Third Elder's field of view. Huo Yuhao had become Tang Wu, and he was still wearing a cold and solemn look on his face. He Kai too had become Tang Sai, and he was wearing a mask as always. Nangong Wan and Third Elder appeared a lot more delighted when they appeared, and Chenan hurriedly went forward to welcome them. You guys are finally here, my honorable guests. He didn't dare to question why Huo Yuhao was late, and he gave him a light nod when their gazes met to signal that the deal that they had agreed upon was prepared and everything was fine. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Huo Yuhao's mouth, and he returned a look to signal that everything was in place on his end as well. Nangong Wan came forward personally to greet them. You guys made it here in the end, and all is well as long as you guys are on time. The Duskwater Alliance's honor and glory will be on your shoulders to uphold and defend. Naturally, we will do our best, Huo Yuhao replied in a cold mutter. Huo Yuhao was wary and cautious of these 2 people, who could well be elders of the Holy Ghost Church. Huo Yuhao couldn't determine their strength with his current cultivation, and their power could definitely be described as deep and immeasurable. The Holy Ghost Church's mighty influence and strength had gradually entered Huo Yuhao's field of view as they gradually surfaced in the world. The dragon god Doluo, Mu Yen, had told Huo Yuhao before that evil soul masters had a very difficult time becoming titled Doluo. However, Huo Yuhao was sure that the Holy Ghost Church, which had been through many years of experience and history, should have mastered a way for evil soul masters to break through that barrier. Of all the evil soul masters that he had seen so far, 4 or 5 were undoubtedly titled Doluo, and the two men in front of him were at least titled Doluo. The Sea God's Pavilion's elders would have a real headache if they had to face these guys, let alone himself. Furthermore, Huo Yuhao didn't know what positions they held within the Holy Ghost Church. He knew that their ranks couldn't be that low, as the Duskwater Alliance controlled nearly half of the overall underground economy. The Duskwater Alliance was the Holy Ghost Church's financial source, so it had to be under the command of people who were relatively higher in rank and status. Nangong Wan stared at Huo Yuhao curiously and said, "You gave me a very strong and lasting impression when we last met, Tang Wu, my little friend. We have to get a little closer to each other after the tournament." Huo Yuhao immediately put up a wary and cautious expression as he said, "There's nothing to be close about. I'm just here for the tournament, and I won't establish any connections with your underground organizations." Nangong Wan laughed heartily and replied, "That's all right. We'll talk about this again after the tournament. Chenin, please introduce tomorrow's finals to our two little friends." Chenin felt his heart pumping vigorously in his chest as he listened to Huo Yuhao and Nangong Wan's conversation. This guy's circumstance seems to be a little different from my judgment. The Duskwater Alliance master should be from that place, so how can he not recognize him? But Tang Wu's abilities are clearly. Chenin felt a little doubtful and suspicious inside, but he had no other choice at this point in time. He had gotten many benefits from Huo Yuhao already, and this was in addition to the fact that they were about to work together again. Chenin forced the doubts in his heart down. "Yes, Alliance Master." Chenin bowed respectfully in Nangong Wan's direction, before he turned towards Huo Yuhao and Hikaitu. This season's Radiant City Elite Soul Engineering Tournament's Grand Finals shall be carried out tomorrow. The Duskwater Alliance is organizing the Grand Final together with the Common Alliance and the Alto Chamber of Commerce, and it will happen in the western suburbs. We have arranged everything on our side. We have finally decided upon the tournament's rules after meticulous discussion. All three sides will send 3 people each for the Grand Finals. Every participant will be given 6 hours to craft a soul tool, and there are no limits on the materials to be used. However, each contestant can only make 1 soul tool, and this phase will conclude after 6 hours. All 9 participants will go through 3 competitive rounds after that. Technique will be tested in the first round, during which a mysterious task will be given. We're not sure what it is at the moment. All 9 soul engineers will be very exhausted after 6 hours of crafting, so this round will undoubtedly be a great test for you all. The lowest scoring participant will be eliminated, while the remaining 8 will proceed to the next round. The second round will be actual combat. Those who obtain the highest score in the technique round will face off against the lowest scorers in the final 8, and 4 people will progress into the next round. The second highest scorer will fight the second from the last, and so on. The 4 who will go on into the next round will be determined this way, and the final 4 will draw lots for the next round, and the final round will happen after that. The tournament's rules have been designed to be as fair as possible. However, there are some things that we have to pay attention to. First, everyone can only forge and use 1 single soul tool, so it will be up to the soul engineer himself or herself whether the soul tool will be focused on attack or defense. They cannot expend too much energy when crafting them, either. Otherwise, they'll run a risk of being eliminated in the technique round. Furthermore, the higher they score in the technique round, the greater the advantage they'll have in the subsequent round of 8. You guys need to have proper planning from the moment you start the 6-hour crafting phase. Both Huo Yuhao and Hikaitu felt a little astonished as they listened to Chenin's introduction. The grand finals organized by the 3 underground organizations were far more complicated than they had imagined. They had to craft soul tools first, and they would have to go through a technique assessment and 3 different rounds of combat to clinch the championship. Winning in this tournament would be quite a challenge. What they didn't know was that all 3 underground organizations were treating this championship very seriously. Furthermore, the Common Alliance and the Alto Chamber of Commerce intended to team up against the Duskwater Alliance. This was the reason why the 3 organizations went through countless rounds of discussion and negotiation before they came up with these rules for the grand finals. These rules were so that their representative soul engineers had to rely on their own abilities to finish the tournament. Of course, it did seem like the Common Alliance and the Alto Chamber of Commerce had an advantage overall. They had 6 people after all, so it would be a lot easier for them to arrange their strategies. Chenin finished his introduction, and Nangong Wan's expression became a little more solemn than before. He lowered his voice and said, "My 3 friends, You are representing the Duskwater Alliance in this competition, and I have absolute faith in your abilities. However, you have to be prepared to resist the other two organizations, as their strategies are likely to target us. Since you are representing the Duskwater Alliance, we will not waste your time. Every one of you will be rewarded whether or not you clinch the championship in the end, and I believe the Common Alliance and the Alto Chamber of Commerce cannot possibly match up to these rewards. Furthermore, we will give them out here, on the spot. Bring them up, please. Nangong Wan waved his right hand as he spoke, and 4 men in black immediately walked over carrying a big trunk between them. All 4 men were tough and muscular, but even they struggled a little as they lifted the trunk together. Huo Yuhao subconsciously released his spiritual power and surveyed the trunk. However, even his reliable spiritual power couldn't pierce through this thick and heavy black trunk. As it brushed against its surface, his spiritual power was kept completely outside. Some of his spiritual power was even refracted away. This is... Huo Yuhao swiftly came to a conclusion. This truck had to be lined with thick lead, meant to block all kinds of tricks and intangible things. There was a layer of steel alloyed with mithril on the outside. Furthermore, he could tell from how these muscular men were struggling that the trunk should weigh between 250 to 500 kilos. What is this? It's forged from pure lead, and wrapped with metal that contains mithril. Huo Yuhao wasn't the only one who was surprised. He Kaitu and even Huang Zheng widened their eyes as they stared at the trunk. They didn't have spiritual detection, but they were still quite sensitive to metal as soul engineers, and they could both feel that the trunk contained mithril. So precious and valuable. The trunk was placed carefully in front of them. Nangong Wan personally walked towards the trunk, raised his right hand and pressed on the trunk's side. A small screen bounced up, with many sophisticated characters and patterns on its surface. Nangong Wan pressed his palm against the screen, and all 5 of his fingers tapped rapidly and rhythmically. This was a passcode-locked explosive case. Passcode-locked cases were considered special trunks that were sealed with both soul tools and a passcode, and they could only be opened with preset patterns and activation methods. As for the explosive in the name, there was no question that an erroneous passcode entry would trigger the explosives inside, and a frightening explosion would follow. However, these explosive cases typically gave a few chances for wrong passcode entries, and thus wouldn't explode on the first wrong try. Still, these chances couldn't be more than 5, and there were many different kinds of secret passcode forms to seal away whatever was inside. This was just a trunk, but it could match a Class 6 soul tool. This video will end here.